My name is Hannah Carter, and 6 months ago, I had it all. At 34, I was the client strategy director at Stratus Consulting Group, one of Chicago's fastest-growing marketing consultancies. I had my corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Michigan Avenue, a team of 12 brilliant strategists who actually respected me, and most importantly, a portfolio of clients who trusted me implicitly with their brands and budgets. What I didn't have was any idea how quickly it could all vanish. Hannah, do you have a minute? Miles Beckett's voice carried that artificial lightness that immediately set off alarm bells. My boss of 7 years never asked if I had a minute unless something was wrong. I followed him down the hallway, past the glass-walled conference rooms where I'd presented countless winning strategies, past the break room where I'd celebrated birthdays and promotions, to the small windowless meeting room we used for client calls that might go badly. The HR intern, Melanie, was already seated, clutching a manila folder and avoiding eye contact. "Take a seat," Miles said, not looking at me directly. He adjusted his designer glasses, a nervous tic I'd come to recognize over the years. "This isn't easy." "Hannah." I remained standing. "What isn't easy, Miles?" "We're terminating your employment, effective immediately." The words hung in the air between us. 7 years of late nights, skipped vacations, and personal sacrifices dismissed in a single sentence. On what grounds? My voice sounded calmer than I felt. Client theft. Miles finally looked at me, his eyes hardening. "We have evidence you've been positioning yourself to take clients with you when you leave." "That's absurd. I haven't." "The Westfield account, you specifically requested your name be added to their contract last quarter. And Meridian Foods, Blue Sky Media, all suddenly insisting on working exclusively with you rather than the firm. Because I built those relationships. They trust me to understand their needs." Miles slid a document across the table. "Your termination agreement, standard non-compete, non-disclosure, non-solicitation clauses. HR will escort you to clear your desk." I didn't touch the paper. "I want to talk to the clients." "That won't be happening." Miles stood up, signaling the meeting was over. "Your company email has already been deactivated. Melissa will walk you out." "Melanie," the intern corrected quietly. 30 minutes later, I stood on the sidewalk outside the gleaming Stratus building, clutching a cardboard box containing 7 years of my professional life. Framed certifications, client thank you notes, and a stack of hard copy contracts I'd insisted on keeping despite Miles mocking my old-school paranoia about digital files. Those contracts would turn out to be the most valuable things I owned. 3 days passed in a blur of shock, anger, and multiple bottles of wine. I oscillated between rage and despair, drafting scathing emails to Miles that I never sent and updating my LinkedIn profile only to delete the changes. On the 4th day, my phone rang with a number I recognized immediately. "Hannah Carter," I answered, trying to sound like someone whose world hadn't just imploded. "Hannah, it's Janet Lewis from Rivera Organics." Janet's voice had the careful neutrality of someone who'd heard rumors. "Do you have a moment to talk?" Janet was the deputy director of business at Rivera Organics, Stratus's biggest client. Their annual contract alone was worth over $2 million. "Of course, Janet, what can I do for you?" "Well, that's just it. We received an email from Miles introducing himself as our new direct contact at Stratus." A pause. "Hannah, what's going on? We signed with Stratus because of you." I chose my words carefully. "Stratus and I have parted ways." "Without any notice to your clients?" Janet sounded genuinely shocked. "Hannah, we're launching a major campaign in 6 weeks. Miles is suggesting we work with someone named Trevor. We've never even met this person." I bit my tongue to avoid saying what I really thought about Trevor's strategic capabilities. "I understand your concern, Janet. Unfortunately, I'm not in a position to help with the campaign anymore." "That's problematic for us." Janet lowered her voice. "Look, I shouldn't say this, But Rivera signed with Stratus because of you specifically. Our legal team is reviewing the contract now. After we hung up, I sat staring at my phone. Something about what Janet said nagged at me. Within the hour, my phone rang again and again. By the end of the week, I'd heard from leadership at Blue Sky Media, Westfield Financial, and Meridian Foods, all expressing the same confusion and displeasure about my sudden departure. That night, I pulled out the box of contracts I'd brought home. 7 years of habitual caution, always keeping hard copies despite the company's digital transformation, had given me a complete record of every client agreement I'd handled. I spread them across my dining table and began to read. 3 hours and 2 cups of cold coffee later, I found it, the clause I'd fought to include in the Rivera contract, and 5 others after that, the key person provision, specifying that if I ceased to be the primary responsible party on the account, the client could terminate their agreement with Stratus without penalty. At the time, Miles had laughed it off. If it makes the client feel better, leave it in. Nobody actually reads these things anyway. But I had read them. And so, apparently, were the legal teams at Rivera Organics and the others. My hands trembled as I gathered the contracts. I needed legal advice, and I knew exactly who to call. "You're absolutely sure these are the original signed contracts?" Megan Doyle asked, examining the papers spread across her living room floor. My best friend since law school, she'd finished. I dropped out after a year. Megan had become one of Chicago's most respected business attorneys. "Yes. Signed by both parties, notarized, the works." Megan pushed her reading glasses up and gave a low whistle. "And Miles fired you for client theft before any clients had actually left?" "Preemptive termination. He called it." "Interesting choice." She tapped her pen against her teeth, her thinking pose. "The non-compete and non-solicitation clauses in your employment contract prevent you from approaching these clients directly." My heart sank. "So I'm stuck." "I didn't say that." Megan smiled, the same smile she'd worn in law school when she'd found the perfect precedent. "The key person provision creates a loophole. If the clients terminate their agreements with Stratus of their own volition, and then choose to work with you independently, you haven't solicited them. Is that legal?" "It's in the gray area, but..." She tapped the Rivera contract. "This language is very clear. If you are no longer their primary contact, they can walk. And once they walk, they're free agents." Hope fluttered in my chest for the first time in days. "So what do I do?" "First, you set up your own consulting firm. Then you wait." "For what?" Megan gathered the contracts into a neat stack. "For the clients to come to you, and they will. Hannah, you've built these relationships for years. Miles just made the biggest mistake of his career." Carter Strategy Partners LLC was born the following week. I used my savings to rent a small office space in the West Loop. Nothing fancy. Just enough to meet clients without using coffee shops. I hired a part-time assistant, created a simple website, and waited. I didn't have to wait long. Janet Lewis called 3 days after I launched the website. "We've terminated our contract with Stratus," she said without preamble. Our legal team cited the key person provision after Miles tried to convince us it wasn't applicable. My heart raced, but I kept my voice level. "I'm sorry to hear that, Janet." "Are you?" "Because we need someone to take over our campaign, and I'm calling to see if Carter Strategy Partners is accepting new clients." By the end of the month, Rivera Organics, Blue Sky Media, and Westfield Financial had all signed with my new firm. I hired 2 former colleagues who'd quit Stratus after my firing, and we moved into a larger office space. The work was exhilarating. Without Stratus's bureaucracy and Miles's micromanagement, we delivered campaigns that exceeded client expectations. Word spread in the industry, and new clients, ones I'd never worked with at Stratus, began reaching out. I was rebuilding, better than before. And then the legal notice arrived. Stratus Consulting Group v. Hannah Carter and Carter Strategy Partners LLC. The allegations were what I'd expected: breach of contract, theft of trade secrets, tortious interference with business relationships. Miles wasn't just trying to sue me, he was trying to destroy me. He's desperate, Megan said when I called her in a panic. These clients represented nearly 40% of Stratus's annual revenue. The board is probably breathing down his neck. Can he win? Not if we play this right. Megan's confidence steadied me. We have the original contracts with the key person provision. We have email trails showing the clients terminated their relationships with Stratus before contacting you. We even have the clients themselves, who I'm betting will testify that they made these decisions independently. So we fight? We don't just fight. Hannah, we win. The next 3 months were a blur of depositions, document productions, and sleepless nights. Miles's legal team was aggressive, filing motion after motion to delay the inevitable. But Megan was better, methodical, relentless, and always 3 steps ahead. The preliminary hearing was set for a Tuesday morning in early December. I wore my most conservative suit, pulled my hair back in a severe bun, and tried not to throw up from nerves. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined, with worn wooden benches and fluorescent lighting that made everyone look slightly ill. Miles sat at the plaintiff's table, looking confident in an expensive suit, flanked by 2 attorneys who probably billed more per hour than I made in a day. Judge Patricia Okafor, a stern-faced woman with silver-streaked hair, studied the files before her with narrowed eyes. Let's get to the heart of this matter, she said finally. Stratus Consulting alleges that Ms. Carter violated her non-compete and non-solicitation agreements by taking clients from her former employer. Ms. Carter contends that these clients terminated their relationships with Stratus independently, citing contractual provisions that permitted such termination. Is that an accurate summary? Both attorneys confirmed it was. Mr. Beckett. Judge Okafor turned to Miles. As CEO of Stratus, would you explain why you believe Ms. Carter violated her agreements? Miles straightened, adjusting his tie. Your Honor, Hannah Carter was a trusted employee who had access to our most valuable client relationships. After we discovered she was planning to leave and take clients with her, we terminated her employment to protect our business interests. Within weeks, several major clients had moved their business to her new company. The timing makes it clear that she solicited these clients in violation of her agreements. And these contractual provisions the client cited when terminating their agreements with Stratus, the key person provisions. Miles waved dismissively. Standard boilerplate language that clients sometimes request. It was never intended to be enforced in this manner. Megan stood. Your Honor, may I present Exhibit A? This is an email from Mr. Beckett to Ms. Carter dated March 15th of last year, discussing the inclusion of the key person provision in the Rivera Organics contract. The bailiff handed the document to the judge, who read it silently. Her eyebrows rose slightly. Mr. Beckett, this email appears to show you instructing Ms. Carter to include this provision, stating, and I quote, "If it makes the client feel better, leave it in. Nobody reads these things anyway. Do you deny writing this?" Miles shifted uncomfortably. I don't recall that specific email, Your Honor. It came from your company email account, Mr. Beckett. Then I may have written it. But, and Exhibits B through G are the original signed contracts with Rivera Organics, Blue Sky Media, Westfield Financial, and 3 other former Stratus clients, all containing identical key person provisions. These are notarized documents. Mr. Beckett. Miles's attorney jumped in. Your Honor, regardless of these provisions, Ms. Carter was bound by her employment agreement not to solicit Stratus clients. Megan was ready. Exhibit H, Your Honor. Affidavits from the Chief Marketing Officer at Rivera Organics, the CEO of Blue Sky Media, and executives at 4 other former Stratus clients, all stating under oath that Ms. Carter did not contact them following her termination. They initiated contact after independently deciding to terminate their agreements with Stratus, citing the key person provision. Judge Okafor spent several minutes reviewing the documents. The courtroom was silent except for the occasional shuffling of papers. Finally, she looked up. Mr. Beckett, did Stratus Consulting include the key person provision in these client contracts? Miles hesitated. Yes, Your Honor. And does this provision explicitly state that if Ms. Carter ceased to be the primary responsible party on these accounts, the clients could terminate their agreements without penalty? Technically, yes, but there is no but. Mr. Beckett, either the contracts contain this provision or they don't. Judge Okafor turned to Megan. Min Doyle, does your client admit to soliciting these clients after her termination from Stratus? She does not, Your Honor, because she did not solicit them. As the affidavits clearly show, the clients contacted Ms. Carter after terminating their relationships with Stratus. Judge Okafor nodded, making a note. Given the evidence presented, I am denying Stratus Consulting's motion for a preliminary injunction against Ms. Carter and Carter Strategy Partners. These clients exercised a contractual right that Stratus willingly granted them. Ms. Carter appears to have honored her non-solicitation agreement by not initiating contact. Unless Stratus can produce evidence of actual solicitation, I see no basis for this suit to proceed. Miles's face flushed red. His attorney leaned over, whispering urgently in his ear. But Miles shook him off. Your Honor, these clients represented millions in annual revenue. You can't seriously believe they all independently decided to leave Stratus at the same time without some coordination by Ms. Carter? Judge Okafor's expression hardened. Mr. Beckett, what I believe is that Stratus Consulting included specific language in its contracts that allowed these clients to terminate their agreements if Ms. Carter was removed from their accounts. Stratus then removed Ms. Carter from these accounts by terminating her employment. The clients exercised their contractual rights, which you, as CEO, approved. If you're looking for someone to blame for this situation, I suggest you start with whoever drafted and approved these contracts. She gathered her papers. This hearing is adjourned. I'll issue a written ruling by the end of the week. But counsel should be prepared for dismissal of all claims against Ms. Carter. As we exited the courtroom, Janet Lewis and executives from 2 other former Stratus clients were waiting in the hallway. They'd come to support me, ready to testify if needed. Miles had to walk past them, his face a mask of barely controlled rage. Janet caught my eye and gave me a small, satisfied smile. The message was clear. Trust matters in business. Miles had broken that trust, and now he was paying the price. 2 days after the hearing, Judge Okafor issued her ruling. All claims against me and Carter Strategy Partners were dismissed with prejudice. Stratus could not refile the suit on the same grounds. The victory felt surreal. I'd stood up to Miles and won, not through underhanded tactics, but by using the very contracts he'd dismissed as unimportant. The contracts I'd insisted on keeping in hard copy, despite his mockery. That evening, as I sat in my new office, still modest compared to my corner space at Stratus, but all mine, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Hannah Carter, I answered. Ms. Carter, this is Lawrence Vanguard from Vanguard & Company. My breath caught. Vanguard & Company was Stratus's biggest competitor, a marketing powerhouse with offices across North America. I've been following your situation with interest. I wonder if you might be available for lunch tomorrow. The lunch turned into 3 hours of intense conversation about business philosophy, client relationships, and the future of marketing. Lawrence Vanguard, a silver-haired veteran of the industry, asked thoughtful questions and listened intently to my answers. You've built something impressive in a very short time, he said as we finished our coffee. Carter Strategy Partners has a client roster many established firms would envy. Thank you, but we're still small, growing, but small. For now. He smiled, sliding a folder across the table. This is a preliminary offer for Vanguard & Company to acquire Carter Strategy Partners. I opened the folder and nearly choked on my coffee. The number was 7 times what I'd expected. This is generous. It's fair. You've proven you can build and maintain client relationships even under adverse conditions. That's rare and valuable. He leaned forward. There's one condition, Ms. Carter. Vanguard wants exclusive rights to service all current and future clients of Carter Strategy Partners. We would need assurances that none of these clients would continue working with Stratus Consulting in any capacity. I studied his face, understanding the subtext. This wasn't just about acquiring my company, it was about delivering a killing blow to Miles and Stratus. I'll need to think about it, I said carefully, and discuss it with my clients. Of course. Lawrence stood, extending his hand. Take a week. But I should mention that we've also been in discussions with Rivera Organics about their international expansion. Having you on the Vanguard team would significantly strengthen our position there. After he left, I sat alone at the table, turning the offer over in my mind. It was enough money to secure my future, to build something bigger than I'd dreamed. But it also meant becoming part of Miles's downfall. Did he deserve that? The man who'd fired me without warning, who'd tried to destroy my reputation and new business. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Stratus Consulting announces layoffs amid client exodus. Miles was already making others pay for his mistakes. I made my decision. The acquisition was announced on a Monday morning. Vanguard and Company acquires Carter Strategy Partners in strategic expansion move. The press release emphasized the combined strengths of both companies and listed the impressive client portfolio that would now be served exclusively by Vanguard. By Tuesday, Stratus's stock had dropped 15%. By Friday, it was down 30%. I received a text from Megan. Have you seen the news? Miles is out. Board forced his resignation. I hadn't expected it to happen so quickly. Part of me felt a twinge of regret. 7 years working alongside someone creates a connection, even if that someone ultimately betrays you. But that regret was overshadowed by the memory of sitting in that small, windowless room, being told my career at Stratus was over because I'd built relationships too strong for the company's comfort. My new office at Vanguard was even nicer than my old one at Stratus. Corner location, custom furniture. A dedicated team twice the size of what I'd had before. Lawrence had made me Executive Vice President of Client Relations, a position created specifically to leverage my relationship-building skills across the entire organization. On my first official day, Janet Lewis from Rivera Organics sent a massive flower arrangement with a card that read simply, "Trust well placed is never forgotten." I placed it prominently on my credenza, a reminder of the lesson I'd learned from this ordeal. In business, as in life, trust is everything. Miles had broken trust. With me, with the clients, with his own board, and lost everything as a result. I had kept faith with the clients who believed in me, stood my ground when challenged, and emerged stronger than before. Not because I sought revenge, but because I refused to let someone else's betrayal define me. 6 months after being escorted from the Stratus building with a cardboard box of belongings, I stood at the window of my new office, looking out at the Chicago skyline. The view was different, but clearer somehow. And this time, I knew exactly how valuable it was. As I turned back to my desk, my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. I opened it to find a single sentence. "You were right about the contracts. MB." I smiled, deleted the message without responding, and got back to work. Some chapters are better left closed, but I kept those original contracts, just in case. Old habits die hard, and this one had saved my career.